Thank you so much. So my name is Matt Schneider. I'm Director of Product Management here at LucidLink. I'm here with my very dear friend, Jane Sung from Cineduc, someone with whom I have talked about workflow for probably a decade. And in particular, we've talked about delivery and mastering files and how to make that very imperfect process far more perfect. So Jane, you want to talk a little bit about how we first met and what the technology was from Cineduc that really captured the imagination of me and all my peers when I worked at Postworks in New York on the customer side.
Hey. So, I guess 5 years ago, we came out with a product called CineX Tools. And CineX Tools is actually born of a challenge. Someone said, you can't insert edit to files because they're files. And actually, the CTO of Cineduc, Charles Dotremont, was like, you know what? I'm going to write a white paper about that. I'm going to write a paper about why you can't because they're files. And I think he just went back. Charles is sort of Charles is a character, but he's also a little bit like when you tell him no, he says, let me figure out how. And he's just the ultimate tinkerer. So he went back with our lead programmer, and the lead programmer was like, not of the broadcast and media space. And he was like, you know what? I can do this. Let's make it. So that first NAB, we came out with CineX Tools. I showed our mutual good friend, Mike Nugget. Now, we were holding a raffle because we were trying to get people to the booth, and we just thought it would be a fun thing. And I was like, okay, the first 10 people who see a demo of CineX Tools can get a free license. And Mike Nugget happened to come in and see a demo. And he was like, what did you just do? I was like, well, I just edited it to the ProRes file. And he's like, wait, so now I can just take this file and send it anywhere because you changed that little bit? And I was like, yeah. So then I think literally 5 minutes later, he dragged Matt over to our booth. And Matt was like, what's this thing about insert edit? So I did the demo for Matt. We've known each other for quite a while now. And I think that at that time, it was kind of jaw-dropping because we were literally able to just replace the little piece of the file without taking it back to an NLE and re-encoding the whole thing. So that's really the crux of insert edit.
I want to add that at that point in time, it was divine intervention because file-based delivery had reached a point of unquestionable maturity. This was the new way of delivering shows. It was the new way of delivering cinema. Yet despite the fact that it had reached that point of maturity, people in general were no longer accepting videotape as a deliverable. There really was no way to solve this very basic problem. And in a post-production environment, clients used to beat us up all the time about why isn't there a way to do what seems on the surface to be so simple, and that's to do an insert edit to a file in the exact same way that people would do an insert edit to videotape, a common practice that was established and mature in the videotape space that just simply wasn't possible in the file-based space. And out of our discussion with you and Charles and Cineduc came this remarkable capability, and we deployed it very widely at Postworks, and it was really a miraculous thing.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know what CineX Tools is, basically what we can do is, let's say you've exported a ProRes file and you've delivered it to your client, and your client's like, you misspelled someone's name in this lower third somewhere. So typically the workflow is you have to go back to your NLE and then you have to re-export the whole file again. And that kicks off another, not just like a re-export process, but like another QC process. So every time there is a mistake, you're literally spending 1 or 2 hours like generating the file, re-QCing the file, re-delivering the file, and it's just painful. So what CineX Tools does is whenever you have a mistake, whatever it is, we are literally able to drop in the fix between set in and out points. So it cuts down that whole cycle. It's like that cycle is gone. So you're literally able to drop in the fix and then spot check that drop in. And we originally started with just video, and now we do audio, and now we do captions, and we do like the whole tool set is amazing. I mean, it has a lot of different features in there. But let me just cue this up because I want to tell you guys where LucidLink comes in. During the pandemic, everybody had to work home. And one of the issues was, well, I can insert edit to my file at home, but then I have to re-upload the whole file again. And I might be saving time from having to re-export that file again, but I still have to re-upload the file. So that was just a big challenge for us. I mean, and we didn't know of LucidLink at that time, and we didn't know how to fix that problem. We were like, that's not really our remit. We don't really know how we're going to fix this. And we tried something, but it was not that successful because it was clunky and it required some expertise and, way, way, way more complicated than the solution that LucidLink provides. Do you want me to keep going?
So there's a remarkable commonality between what LucidLink is doing and what CineX Tools is doing. It's relying on the smallest common denominator to solve problems in workflow. So in the case of CineX Tools, you're doing an insert edit down to the frame. In video workflows, the frame is the smallest common denominator. And what LucidLink did, and this is what you did really as a science experiment at the beginning of the pandemic, was can LucidLink make unnecessary the previous requirement of pull something down to a workstation that's going to do an insert edit and then push it all the way back up. And of course, that means that somebody else on the other side of the world will have to pull it down again and then review it and accept it and sign off on it and then push it back up. And all that back and forth is, of course, ridiculous. And all that back and forth goes away immediately when you use LucidLink. So just like CineX Tools relying on the smallest common denominator to make a change, LucidLink is effectively doing the same thing, but in the case of LucidLink, it's pulling down or caching just a single block of data, the smallest common denominator needed to do an insert edit. So you don't need to bring down the entire file. You don't even need to bring the file back up. You're actually making the change directly to its location in the LucidLink cloud.
So what's really cool is that when we do an insert edit, the only thing that is being uploaded is not the entire file. The only thing that's being uploaded is the change to the file. So it could be like, you can literally be uploading 5 frames. And you can only imagine how fast those 5 frames upload. On the CineX Tools side, you're pointing to the file that is in the cloud in someone's S3 bucket, but the customer, the person who's using it, doesn't know. It just looks like just like a regular drive map, and you find the file, and there you go. So, it seems simple, but it's kind of remarkable because you're just changing the little bit that you need to change, and you're only uploading the little bit that you need to upload, and it just kind of like wormhole collapses the entire workflow because you're literally not having to re-upload, like all of those iterative processes that make file delivery, versioning, QC, review, all of those things that are so painful just because of the logistics of delivering files goes away. And that's really kind of where it's a beautiful solution when used together.
In fact, simplicity is the value add. So it presents itself as a conventional local volume to both the human element, the artist who's doing the work, and it presents itself as a conventional local volume to the software layer CineX Tools that is actually mechanically writing the frames. Both software and human element see it as a conventional local volume. Thus, there isn't anything that you could do to make that workflow as simple as it is.
So what was really cool was that, so we actually found out that we have a shared customer, and it's just like a strange synchronicity because Matt knows this customer. So the customer is the Finish Line, and they're a post facility in the UK. They have quite a number of, they're kind of spread out, and Zeb, who's the owner of the Finish Line, came to this solution on his own. So he was using CineX Tools for a number of years. The pandemic hit, and then he was like, well, how am I going to get the files to my customers for review? How are we going to collaborate together? And he was like, well, let me just try it. And it worked. Like, he didn't Like he tried it. He didn't have to do anything to even try it. It just did the thing that it was supposed to do. So he kind of top down just implemented it across all of the different editors that he works with. They all use CineX tools. They all use LucidLink. They are able to have a completely remote collaborative workflow. They have editors in Manchester and Wales and all different parts of the UK, and they're able to fix files, deliver files, QC files because they're using CineX tools and LucidLink together.
When Zeb started to work with CineX tools and LucidLink, the initial thought was this was about business continuity at the start of the pandemic. How can business really continue with minimum interruption despite the circumstances of a global pandemic? Now that we are thankfully starting to emerge from the pandemic, it is no longer just an exercise in business continuity. Now this is really a new way of working. So LucidLink for Zeb is really how he supports distributed workflows using a multitude of different creative tools. And it isn't just about surviving a pandemic. And CineX Tools is how he is continuing to do mastering and final delivery workflows, whether he's in the facility or working remotely in a home environment or remote environment. So putting those two together really has become a pipeline for the future.
I think he has like 20 or 30 people within his organization. So it's not just like one guy delivering files. I mean, this is a largish, medium largest organization delivering to all the major studios in the UK and, worldwide. It's really impressive that he's been able to grow his post-production business because he's been able to use both products so well. And there's a cause very near and dear to Zeb, and I hope I do him justice by speaking about it. But a lot of times in post-production, you're sort of required to like sit in your dark room by yourself, deliver the files re-export, re-QC the files as many times as it takes to deliver the files. I mean, you could literally be working 18 hours a day just being in a factory, like re-encoding, re-QC. And he was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to have a better quality of life. How do I have a family? How do I have friends? How do I have a life beyond sitting in this dark room re-exporting files a bajillion times? And he's always been like a humanist. I think we like to call him a humanist technologist. He's always very human forward with the new tools he's bringing into his facility. And really, the idea of LucidLink, the idea of CineX tools mesh so well together because it's really about saving you time. And it's really about giving you back that time so that you can do other things in your life, right?
Before the show, we had the opportunity to speak with Zeb and talk about the workflow and talk about what his process was. And he made exactly this point that work-life balance is important. But I can really relate to Zeb because as somebody who is guilty as charged for having worked 80, 90 hours a week in my early days of post-production, he made the valid point that when you're a younger person, that may have a certain nobility, but that's not sustainable. And that actually really isn't. There's nothing noble about putting in 90 hours a week, which was necessary perhaps with older forms of technology and older workflows. Now, if you're putting in 80 hours or 90 hours a week, that's a technology problem, that's a management problem, that's a workflow problem. And these are tools that solve those problems. So in particular, LucidLink allows for him to have this distributed workflow with very, very little friction, if any, for the tools and methods that his artists are used to. And CineX tools in particular helps with mastering workflows in a way that does not necessitate watching the same content again and again and again.
Yeah, he actually, at the end of that call, he was like, well, when you get to the UK, I'm going to buy you 100 beers and at least a couple of dinners. I was like, why? And he's like, I literally save 100 hours every single week using CineX tools and LucidLink together. I was like, he's like, this is the spine of my business. And it's really heartwarming because I think that when you make a product, when you make a software product, and you really want people to use it, and you really want people to value it, and not just because like, oh, it saves you time, but like it actually gives you back a quality of life. Like, why do we create product? What is the purpose? Like, are we trying to make something better? And is it working? And like when you hear that story from Zeb, you're like, there's this human component to it, and I'm so happy that what we make is helping you do that. Like, that is so amazing to hear.
When we first implemented Cinex tools at Postworks in New York, there was actually a little bit of pushback from the clientele who didn't believe it was real. And they actually made us QC things multiple times from flash to flash, from the beginning of the show to the end of the show, assuming that it wasn't possible that you could do an insert edit in literally seconds. And so there was a fair amount of doubt that it was real. Eventually, we were able to convince the clientele that, look, we just changed the shot. We had to do lots of demos. We had to explain that if you have a typo in a title card, or the slate is wrong, or the grade of a particular shot changes, that you see that change instantaneously. When you add LucidLink, you get that same kind of flexibility with no constraints to geography or location or wherever you are in the world. So you put these two things together, they have a kind of a uncanny commonality in terms of relying on the smallest common denominator of blocks of data to change, push, or pull. Now you have a real winning workflow.
And I remember my first demo of Cinex tools and LucidLink. When we were demoing Cinex tools, I was expecting other people's jaw to drop. But when I saw Cinex tools and LucidLink together, my jaw dropped. And I was like, oh my God, that's the problem that we've been literally trying to solve since the beginning of the pandemic. And it was such a beautiful sort of technology marriage, right? Because I think the idea behind it is the same. You said it so much better than I did.
I should add that marrying those two technologies didn't require any effort. There wasn't any coding, there wasn't any unique integration. It didn't go through multiple alpha or beta cycles. This is something that really worked on the first try. And it's because the Cinex tools application isn't really aware that the volume is a cloud storage environment, that it presents itself as a local mount point on a conventional hard drive. That's really unique, that you put these two unique technologies together and they really work on the first try.
Yes. It really is as easy as just using them together. There's literally nothing to it. And I work in technology, but I'm not super technical. And literally, if it takes more than 5 minutes to install, I'm just over it. I'm like, I'm done. Like, I don't have time for this. And I remember the person who introduced LucidLink to me, I remember them showing it to me, and I was like, well, so is that it? Do I have to do anything? And he's like, oh, that's it. And I was like, oh, that is so simple. I'm going to tell literally everybody about this because it is so simple to use on its own and then also together.
Simplicity is by design, and that is, it is there for a reason. It's simple to understand, to use it. It also is simple at a software layer. So any creative tool can use it effectively immediately. Very little integration, if any, is needed. It is just a volume mounted on your local hard drive, Mac, Windows, or Linux. And that content could be accessible for read and write workflows anywhere in the world.
Is that it? Thank you. Thank you. We love partnering with you guys too.
So I guess I should say thank you for your partnership.
Yes.
And we love that you are part of the LucidLink family, and so glad that our technologies can be so complementary. So thank you.
It's really lovely to see you here. And I was just like, yay, I get to work with you again.
And it's lovely to see you, Jane.